Good morning. Out on another hike. It's 6 a.m. back in Gatineau Park. And I hope you're having an amazing day. God bless to you all. It's actually quite cool out right now. It's around 17 degrees, which to me is a pretty solid hiking temperature. A little cooler would be nice, but given how hot the summers get here in Ontario / Quebec, I guess, I'm quite thankful for that. More recently, I've been trying to hit a lot of trails with more significant elevation climbs because later this summer I want to do the Adirondack Mountains, which be a lot of fun, but that'll be like a 10-hour hike, you know? And it's pretty much all the way up. A lot more steep, a lot greater. But it's literally the only mountain range that's anywhere close to Ottawa. And it's like 3.5 hours away. Something I'm not a huge fan of with Ontario is there's no mountains. It's relatively flat. I mean, it's all rolling hills now. And that's kind of because Ontario, that area, had historically some of the biggest mountains, right? But after years and years and years of erosion, they're nothing more than a couple rolling hills now. So it's kind of too bad, but I mean, thankfully there is still places in Canada I can go see. This would be nice. I have people I know walk outside their house and they're staring at a mountain. Can you imagine that? It'd be amazing. It's crazy the difference doing a trail in, February and then later in June. Did this back in like February, March, completely covered in snow. The trail looked completely different. Now, as you can clearly see around me, quite green. I can actually see the floor of the trail. Last time it was just ice and snow. Obviously, both times you go on the trail, it's different in their own way and beautiful in their own way. I think winter hiking does definitely have its own charm to it. First off, it's cool, which I love, because obviously hiking around, you're gonna get your body moving a ton. You're gonna feel warm, hot, just from moving. So it's a nice balance. Versus summer, obviously, it's humid. You're gonna feel a bit more gross. But I think with summer, there's definitely more of a diversity of view in the trails, right? Like, I won't get views like this in the dead of winter. It's so nice to see the way everything just shines through. It looks so cool. I've reached my view. Oh my gosh, look at this. Isn't that incredible? I mean, it definitely looks a whole lot prettier in person. I can actually see all the cities, the roads, everything like that. Absolutely stunning view. Wow. I love that. Now I'd actually want to start getting into the point of this video, which by the title you can see is about humility. Just reading through scripture, you get to see it a lot. All these different themes throughout the Bible. And I think humility is incredibly important and maybe not as much spoken about, in Christian spaces. So I wanted to kind of speak about it a bit. So there's a specific part I want to focus on today, and it's this segment from St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. I'll read it for you. If then there's any encouragement in Christ, any consolation from love, any sharing in the Spirit, any compassion and sympathy, make my joy complete. Be of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord, and of one mind. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. Each of you look not on your own interests, but to the interests of others. Verse 3 of chapter 2. Looking at others as better than yourselves. This is kind of the pinnacle of humility in the Bible. And it's a theme that Jesus spoke about a lot. When I read through this the first time, I didn't really understand it. I didn't understand why I should be seeing others as better than myself. Now, I kind of understood from just generally reading it that it was speaking about humility. But that line, better than yourselves, I didn't quite understand. Why do I want to see myself as, in that case, worse than others? Why not seeing everyone as equal? These are kind of the questions I asked myself. One of the things that really bothered me is how far can you kind of extend this sentence outwards? So, if I'm not the most evil person in the world, and most people would probably say to themselves that they wouldn't be either, that we could probably think of at least one person that's done a lot more horrible things than we have. How can we put a person like that above ourselves? How could we, in a more general case, think of people who've done worse than us be, in a sense, better than us? I think one of the most beautiful ways of looking at this is by looking at what St. Thomas Aquinas had to say about this. So then he puts the same question forward that I just did, right? How can an innocent man think with truth of himself worse than the most wicked of men? In simple terms, how can an innocent person see themselves worse than a bad person? So this is how he answers, and I think this is incredibly creative. He says that a man who has received very extraordinary gifts from God cannot think these gifts less than what any other has received, but he may reflect that he has nothing and is nothing of himself. And a man truly humble considers only his own sins and failings, and is persuaded that any other person would have made better use of the same graces. So let's kind of break that down together. How I kind of understood that is this: all the good that we have, that we do, and that we are, isn't of our own, but comes from God. Especially all the talents in which we are able to do it. Can we think that we are using the gifts that God gave us to the best of our own degree? If we look at the talents that we have, that God gave us, imagine that God gave those exact talents and gifts to someone else. The exact same gifts and talents that you currently have. If God gave that to someone else, Do you think there's a chance that someone else might have used those gifts better than you? Would you see yourself as being the person who's utilized your gifts and talents to the highest degree and that no one could have done better? According to St. Thomas and according to the Bible, no. Someone would have used your talents better than yourself. So when we make comparisons to one another, a truly humble person should view others as better than themselves because they acknowledge the differences God gave them and God gave you with their gifts, talents, and good. And so we can't judge that others may be worse than us or better than us because we can acknowledge that there may be a case that someone with the exact same talents and gifts that God gave us could outperform us. I mean, this idea of humility was so foreign to the world 2,000 years ago. You know, back then, humility was kind of looked down upon, right? Being self-asserting, imposing one's will over another. That was what true manhood was back then. I mean, this is still true today, right? Especially in the West. And we can see this all the time. There's such a huge focus on topics like individualism, on succeeding on our own, being self-made, being a self-made man or a self-made woman. That's so important today. That's so praised in our culture. You know, I too kind of once believed these similar things. You know, there was at a time nothing I saw better than the values of individualism. You know, I thought that was so important. That would be showing how I've made it in the world. So I achieve what I achieve because I did it all on my own. And now I look back and think that was complete rubbish. I'll be honest. You know, the things we work for in life, whether it be getting a promotion at a job or buying a new car with our hard-earned money, the talents and gifts that we use to acquire such things didn't come from us. Whether it be hard work, intelligence, wisdom, strength, perseverance even. We have these gifts from God. You know, as Christians, we are called to be Christ-like. That's one of the things that we should work to live up to in our life, is to be like Christ. So, in the case of humility, how can we look at Christ, at Jesus, through that lens? Well, let's try to look at the example of what Jesus was, right? This is kind of what I wrote down when I was thinking about this. Imagine yourself as creator of the universe, the most powerful being in existence, so powerful and so great that those who worship you, your creations, can't even fathom the true measure of your brilliance. And despite this, you humble yourself down into their form, not Jesus. Instead, he comes here as a servant for God, and he dies for his creations so that they may know God for eternity. There's no greater act of humility than minimizing yourself down to the shape of a human for the sake of those you created, for the sake of your children, for those you love, despite them hating you to the point that they kill you on a cross. That's humility. When we compare ourselves to others, we typically do so out of either envy or pride. In the case of pride, why do we do this? Ask ourselves that. Is it because we receive some joy of seeing ourselves as better than those around us? Does it make us feel good to feel like we outperform our peers in one aspect or another? That thinking is wrong. I get it, though, right? It feels good to be acknowledged by those around us. I think being humble will allow us to see ourselves and others differently. I think one of the best things about it is it allows us to be more thankful for what we have, for the talents and gifts that God gave us, right? God gave everyone different things. It also allows you to know, how am I using the gifts and the good that God's given me, the life He's given me? I think in general, it helps us to be more thankful for what we have, for what God gave us specifically, to allow us to better reflect, how can we use these gifts to serve God? I'd say to close off this segment on humility, look into your own life. Reflect on how you compare yourself to others, on how you view yourself and your gifts, how often you take pride in yourself. Reflect if that's a way that you want to keep going forward with. The uniqueness that God put into you is just what makes you different, not better. We're back. That just about wraps up this video. I want to thank anyone who watched this. I hope some, most, or all of what I said made some sense to you, allowed you to reflect. I hope you have all an amazing day, and God bless you.